of the MMAOB Daily Podcast. I'm your host, as always, Adam Martin, and I'll be taking you guys through the latest in the world of mixed martial arts. You guys can follow me on Twitter at MMAdamMartin. This podcast is always available at MMAOddsbreaker.com, our YouTube channel. Like, share, subscribe. iTunes, SoundCloud, Anchor, bunch of places. So it's available in a lot of places now. Really appreciate the support, guys. All right, let's talk about UFC Sao Paulo and Bellator 234. But I'll start with UFC Sao Paulo. Man, not a good card. Probably one of the worst cards of the year, if not arguably the worst card of the year. Just not a good card. A lot of people were just disappointed with how it played out. Main event, a very bad fight. I would argue one of the worst main events in UFC history, arguably. A lot of people were saying that it's up there with like the Motown Madness fight, and recently the Shevchenko-Carmouche fight was really bad too. This fight was pretty bad. So let's just get right into it. I'll start with the main event, work my way down as always. Jan Blachowicz defeats Ronaldo Jacare Souza via split decision, 48-47, 47-48, 48-47. A super close fight. Really could have gone either way. As you guys know, I did pick Jacare for the upset. I did think he won the first 3 rounds, but it was one of those fights where it was so close and honestly not much happened where I didn't really care enough. I did look at the stats. Blachowicz did land more strikes. I did think Souza had more control, and I felt like that won in the first 3 rounds, but honestly, it could have went either way. So I'm okay with the decision. I just think it was a really bad fight, and I don't think it's the kind of fight where Blachowicz would get a title shot. He did call for John Jones after the fight. I think John Jones didn't even recognize his call out on Twitter. I don't think he said anything. This is not the kind of fight or the kind of result you want in order to get a title shot. It was just a really bad fight. He has won 6 of his last 7 fights, though, so you got to give Blachowicz credit. He's very improved, no doubt about it. He's looked good overall. The win over Rockhold was awesome. Krylov, Manuel Cannonier, some really good wins there. He did lose to Santos earlier this year. I think some people are forgetting about that. It was only in February. It feels like forever ago, but it was this year. So he did go 2-1. But here's my problem with Blachowicz's little win streak here. These guys are middleweights. Souza is a former middleweight. Rockhold's a former middleweight. Those guys were making their light heavyweight debuts. Cannonier's now a middleweight. So to me, a lot of these guys he's beaten are on the smaller end of 205. I don't think it says anything about his ability to compete with a guy like John Jones. There's no doubt about it. Blachowicz is a quality fighter, and a quality guy, but a quality fighter. He's got really good takedown defense, as we saw in this fight. His striking is pretty good, but he didn't show the aggression that I think that a lot of people wanted to see out of him in order to prove that he could compete with a guy like John Jones, or quite frankly, some of the other top-end guys like Anthony Smith. I don't even know if he beat him right now. So to me, Blachowicz got the win. He got his name in the W column, but it's not a fight to get some title shot. I do think Anthony Smith or Corey Anderson is going to be next for him. He did fight Corey Anderson back in 2015. It's a fight a lot of people forget about because it was so long ago. And honestly, Blachowicz is a different fighter now, better takedown defense than back then. But I think that rematch could happen. I think Smith would be a good fight, but there's just no way in hell this guy gets a title shot for this. As far as Souza goes, 39 years old and coming off back-to-back losses now. Again, I thought he won this fight. He's lost some really close decisions in his career. The Yoel Romero fight, the Kelvin Gastelum fight, the Jan Blachowicz fight. For whatever reason, he's just one of these guys where the decisions go against him. So he kind of needs to finish his fights. Jorge Masvidal had this issue a few years ago where he'd lose a lot of split decisions. Now he's finishing guys. He doesn't have to do that. If you look at Souza's career, most of his wins in the UFC, 8 of the 9 wins he has have come by stoppage. So he's a guy that honestly needs to stop. His only decision win in the UFC is over Francis Carmont. The other fights he's gone the distance, he's lost. And he has been knocked out once, obviously, by Whitaker. But otherwise, he's a guy who honestly needs to win by knockout or submission, because it seems like when he goes to the decision, he loses. If you look at his career, he's been the distance 9 times, and at least how many of these are 5 are losses. So he's lost more fights than he's won when it goes to the judges' scorecards, and that's not a good omen. Again, 39 years old. He says he's not going to retire. He did issue a statement, and he said that he's still going to compete. And I do think he can win some fights, but at 205, he did see him on the smaller end. Couldn't get the takedown. That's not a good sign. Again, it was a close fight. He arguably won the fight, but guys lost 3 of his last 4 fights on paper. Again, some of those fights could have went either way. He could have won them, but at this point in time, I mean, I don't know if you can really call him a true title contender anymore. And if he doesn't ever get a title shot, I again would argue that he's arguably the best fighter to never get a title shot in UFC history, because he's never fought for the belt, which is insane, coming off that Strikeforce run, and also his first bunch of fights in the UFC were quality victories. So overall, it was not a very good main event. Fans were very disappointed. Derek Brunson posted a really funny picture of his daughter sleeping, saying, "Thanks, Blachowicz, for putting the kid to sleep." I thought that was hilarious. But yeah, not a great fight. All right, co-main event. I actually really enjoyed this fight. I saw some mixed reviews for this one. Mauricio Shogun Hua and Paul Craig fight to a split draw. 29-28 Shogun, 28-29 Craig, 28-28 draw. The judge had a 10-8 in the first round for Craig and then 10-9, 10-9 for Shogun. I scored the fight 29-28 for Mauricio Shogun Hua. I gave him the second and third round. I gave Paul Craig, of course, the first round. Paul Craig came out guns a-blazing, really aggressive. I really liked the way he came out. Just tried to put Shogun away early. Didn't work. Shogun, he has been knocked out a couple times, but he's still a very, very durable guy and very hard to finish. So especially a guy like Craig, he doesn't have a ton of knockout power. I guess I'm not completely shocked that he didn't get the finish in this one early on, even though he tried his best to. But again, Shogun showed his heart. He managed to go the full 3 rounds. I did think he won the fight. If you go to MMADecisions.com, the majority of media members scored the fight for Mauricio Shogun Hua. So most people thought he won the fight as far as the media goes. But definitely a super close fight and I would say, interesting decision for sure, because that first round really could have been 10-8. It's just I personally felt it was 10-9, but I could see the 10-8 argument. So no one wins, and I don't like draws. I know that they're going to happen sometimes, especially when you have a 10-8 round. I'm not a fan of draws in MMA. I know some people think it's a good thing. I don't think so, because first off, one of these guys isn't going to get a win bonus. The UFC just keeps that money, so I'd like to see at least someone get it. And second off, now what do you do with these guys? It seems like a rematch might be in order, though. Both guys seem to want it. Shogun says he's interested in it. He would travel to Glasgow, in Craig's hometown, to fight Paul Craig. Paul Craig wants the rematch as well. This fight was in Brazil. The rematch in Scotland would be interesting. I never imagined that these guys would be competing at the end of Shogun's career. It could be his last fight. He says he has 2 more fights left in him. He says his wife wants him to retire after 2 more. So we'll see what happens. I personally am okay with the rematch. I like this fight. I thought it was a good fight. I don't mind seeing it for 5 rounds. But if they want to do both guys against other people too, that's fine with me. Maybe you do Shogun against a younger prospect and Craig in the same way against a prospect. But if they do a rematch, I'm fine with it too. It was a good fight. I enjoyed the fight. I just thought that Shogun won the fight. Next up, Charles Oliveira knocks out Jared Gordon in the first round. And this fight was a complete mismatch from the get-go. Again, when this fight was announced, I was like, wow, why did they book this fight? It didn't really make sense. Jared Gordon, I like this guy's story. He's definitely a durable guy. He's very he's got a good life story, no doubt about it. And he's fought hard to get to this point in his life. But wow, 3-3 now with 3 knockout losses in the UFC. That's not good. And this knockout loss was ugly. At this point, this guy could be released. I think this was a tough fight for him for sure against a very, very good fighter, Charles Oliveira, who's improving rapidly. Charles Oliveira, he's still only 30 years old. It's crazy, right? Like, he's been in the UFC for 10 years and he still gets better and better. It's crazy. He's won 6 straight fights by stoppage now. It's an unbelievable little win streak he's got going on here. 18 wins in his career by submission, 8 by knockout. His last 2 fights by knockouts. And look at the names he's beaten here. Gordon, again, he's not a great fighter. He's like an average lightweight, maybe below average, arguably. Nick Lentz is a solid, though. Good wrestler. David Taymor is a good fighter. Jim Miller is obviously a veteran. Clay Guida, Christos Giagos. So he's got some good wins here, and I've enjoyed watching Oliveira's little run here. So to me, this guy he's not a top contender, because if you look at his career, he's lost to pretty much every top guy he's fought for the most part, but he's definitely more than a gatekeeper at this point. If he keeps getting better, who knows, maybe he could get back up there. After the fight, he called out for Conor McGregor, Paul Felder, and Khabib Nurmagomedov. Honestly, it's an interesting matchup against Khabib. I think Khabib probably breaks him, because we've seen this guy break in the past, but it would be interesting, no doubt about it, because Oliveira, if he goes to the ground with anyone, he can submit them. He has the record for most finishes in the UFC by submission at 13, so that'd be interesting. Conor, he possibly could submit him, probably gets knocked out, though. We've seen him get knocked out. Paul Felder's interesting rematch. We did see this fight 2 years ago. Paul Felder won by ground and pound. That'd be an interesting rematch, though. I wouldn't mind seeing it. Paul Felder, he's coming off 2 straight wins, the one over Edson Barboza. There's still a chance they could do that trilogy fight with Barboza, but if they do this fight with Oliveira, the rematch, I'm fine with that, too. I think it'd be a fun fight, and it'd be interesting to see who would be favored in that one. So I've been really impressed with Charles Oliveira, guys, and 6 straight wins says everything. The guy he's looked amazing. Next up, Andre Muniz defeats Antonio Arroyo via unanimous decision, 30-27 across the board. I thought this was going to be a really close fight. It turned out to be kind of a lopsided fight here. Muniz just dominated the fight from bell to bell for the most part. So good for him getting his first win in the UFC. And the same thing with the Wellington tournament Marcus Price fight. Another fight I thought would be close, and it wasn't. 30-27 across the board in a unanimous decision victory for Wellington Turman, who's a very young fighter. He's looked pretty good so far. He had the loss to Robertson by split decision, but he looked good in this fight. So overall, 4 fights won the distance on this main card. It wasn't the greatest main card, but Oliveira definitely stood out. He won a bonus for his performance. And I like the Hua and Craig fight. Let's talk about the prelims now. Again, it was kind of a mixed bag here. There were some pretty awful fights and a couple of good finishes, including James Krause's knockout over Sergio Moraes. Awesome knockout by James Krause. This guy is super underrated, really flying under the radar right now. 6 straight wins, so he's looked great. Time for a step up for sure after back-to-back knockouts over Warley Alves and Sergio Moraes. He's looked incredible. So I've really enjoyed watching James Krause's run. He's obviously turned into a really good coach as well at Glory MMA and Fitness. So he's an amazing coach, and his team's doing really well, and clearly a great fighter too. So only 33. He's been around forever. He's been around since the WEC days, but he still gets better and better. And it's time for maybe a top 15 guy for him. I mean, you'd like to see that, but that division's pretty stacked. And then you got Moraes here, 37 years old now. He's lost 3 straight fights. Probably end of the road for him. Maybe they give him another fight. He is pretty popular down there in Brazil, but it was a really bad 2019 for him with 3 straight losses to Krause, Alves, and Anthony Rocco Martin. Next up, Ricardo Ramos defeats Luis Eduardo Garagori via submission. Another fight that I did see this kind of being a mismatch. Ramos has looked really good in the UFC, 5-1. The one loss to Said Nurmagomedov, but other than that, he's looked incredible. He's a really good fighter, and even at 145, this guy is super dangerous. Garagori, he was undefeated coming in this fight, but a very padded record. He fought pretty much nobodies, so I'm not shocked that he lost his undefeated record. But yeah, great win for Ramos. He won a bonus as well. I should mention Krause won as well. They didn't give a fight of the night. If they did, I think Hua and Craig would have won it, but they chose to give 4 performance of the nights, and I'm okay with that too. Next up, Francisco Trinaldo defeats Bobby Green. Unanimous decision, 30-27, 29-28, 29-28. This was a really close fight. If you look at MMA decisions, a lot of the media actually scored for Bobby Green, including some that had a 30-27 for Green. So the complete opposite, really, of what some of the judges had here. I had it for Trinaldo, I think 29-28. It was a close fight. Really could have gone either way. Bobby Green, unfortunately, this was kind of a bad matchup for him, going down to Brazil, fighting a guy who's so popular there and who honestly wins a lot of close decisions, whereas Bobby Green's a guy who loses close decisions. So Bobby Green, man, he started off his UFC career so well. 4 straight wins. He had that win over Josh Thompson, that huge win there. And since then, he's 1-5-1. So he's really struggled. I like Bobby Green a lot. We had him on the Old Party Shop podcast, me and James. He was awesome. Really nice guy. I like Bobby Green a lot. I respect him as a fighter. And, he's a guy who's grinded his way to the UFC. He's had 35 fights. He used to fight in King of the Cage and some other promotions down there in Mexico and California. But he's struggled. And he has lost to some really quality guys like Poirier, Barboza, Trinaldo, close. But I think this might be the end of the road for Bobby Green. They might give him one more fight because he is, for the most part, an exciting guy who puts on close fights. But I think this could be the end of the road for Bobby King Green. And for Trinaldo, at 41 years old, the oldest fighter in the UFC lightweight division, still getting the job done. So pretty incredible. I remember when this guy was on The Ultimate Fighter and he quit on the stool against Thiago Perpetua. And I was like, wow, this guy he's not good. And wow, he's really made himself a really good career in the UFC. He's had some nice wins over his career. Paul Felder, Jim Miller, Evan Dunham, now Bobby Green. So he's had some really good wins, and this was another quality win. Although it was a close fight, he did get his hand raised, and he's another guy who's a bubble top 15 guy at 155 pounds. Next up, Randy Brown defeats Warley Alves via submission triangle choke. Great win here for Randy Brown. Looked awesome in this fight. Triangle choke submission, improves his record to 6-3 in the UFC. Back-to-back stoppage wins now over Warley Alves and Brian Barberina. 2-fight win streak, won 3 of his last 4. He's looked really good. Another guy who really does deserve a top 15 guy, but again, that division's really stacked at 170. It's hard to land those ranked opponents. I'm not too sure what's next for Randy Brown, but the guy is very, very good. And for Warley Alves, this guy's looked incredible times, like when he submitted Colby Covington, even the last fight with Sergio Moraes, but he's just been really inconsistent. Just 1-2 over his last 3 fights and 3-4 over his last 7. So really inconsistent lately. I still think he's a quality guy, but clearly not a contender. He's lost too many fights at this point to guys that he should have beaten. Next up, we have Douglas Silva de Andrade, arguably retired Brandon Brow here with a lopsided decision, 30-27 times 2 and then 30-26. I had every round for de Andrade. Brandon Brow is completely done. I mean, I don't want to see him fight in the UFC anymore. He is, look at this record, guys, 2-8 over his last 10 fights. That is terrible. And I actually looked at it since USADA has been introduced. He's 1-7, so a terrible record in the post USADA age, or I should say the USADA age. It's just not good. I mean, this guy at one point was arguably the greatest fighter in the world, pound for pound. Some people are saying that. Joe Rogan, I remember, said that. Dana White called him a monster, famously. And he had some good wins. Like, I was at the fight against Eddie Wineland in Toronto. I was on the John Jones Gustafsson co-main event. He knocked him out with the spinning back kick. It was a great win. He had the wins over Faber. But the TJ Dillashaw fights really hurt this guy's career. And since they just look terrible. I mean, look at this losing streak. Like, Andre Ewell, Luke Sanders, like, these are guys he should have beaten, like Brian Kelleher. These are decent fighters, but guys that he would have smoked a few years ago. So this guy is completely done at this point, guys. I hate to say it, but I don't see him getting another fight in the UFC. 5 straight losses. That's not good. Bellator, I don't even think Bellator would be interested. I don't think PFL is interested. This guy either retires or goes to Jungle Fight back in Brazil. I don't see the big promotions being interested in Henbrow. He's not a quality fighter anymore. And for D'Andrade, you needed this win. He got back in the win streak after that loss to Peter Yan. But again, another guy that he's been kind of inconsistent, although this was his featherweight debut, so maybe this weight class change is going to be good for him. A couple other fights here to kick off the card. They weren't too exciting. Ariane Lipski defeats Isabella de Padua in a catchweight fight, 30-26, 30-26, 29-27. I mean, Lipski, listen, like, she's marketable. I mean, she's obviously really good looking, and she does have good striking. Like, she came out really aggressive. But that takedown defense is really bad. And I just can't see her competing against anyone who has any sort of wrestling ability at women's 125. So she does have good striking. We've seen her knock people out in the past, but this is a fight she obviously needed to win over a fighter that took the fight on 2 days' notice. And to me, she didn't look great. So she got the win. She's going to keep her job in the UFC, but even she said it, I think, in an interview after the fight. She's like, I have a 4-fight deal, and even if I win my next fight, I'm not guaranteed to stay around. So she needs to really get a quality win over a better opponent than De Padua. And finally, Tracy Cordovez defeats Vanessa Melo 30-27, 30-27, 29-28. Cortez, another marketable fighter for sure, but this wasn't a great fight. She did look good in the third round. I got to give her credit there. She started turning up the heat in the third round. Didn't get the finish, but looked pretty good in that third round. But the first 2 rounds were just not exciting to watch. So overall, just a very average card, below average, if anything. One of the more forgettable cards in the last little while. Some good finishes, to be sure, but overall, just not a great card. I really didn't enjoy it too much, and it is what it is. All right, let's talk about Bellator 234 because there were some okay fights. I mean, we saw the odds, guys. We all know that there were some mismatches on this one, but I'm going to talk about it anyway. So Bellator 234, this actually took place Thursday. I did not watch it. I didn't want to spoil you guys, so I didn't watch it myself. I watched it Friday night, taped it, and then watched it later on. Let's just go through some of these fights here. So main event of the evening, Linton Vassell pulls off the upset over Surya Karatonov, finishing him via TKO with punches. Good performance here at Vassell. Gets back in the win column after 3 straight losses. I was surprised by this performance. He looked really good in this fight. And Karatonov's a guy that I have a lot of respect for. He's been around forever. He was on a nice win streak. So for him to get beaten down like this it's surprising to me. Again, one of the only upsets on this card, really, one of those cards where Bellator had booked some mismatches and they kind of played out that way. But yeah, for Vassell, 36 years old now, so he's getting up there in age, but man, he looked good in this fight. And Karatonov, 39, that's probably it for him as a title contender, unfortunately, unless there's some sort of short notice opportunity or injury to someone. But yeah, for Linton Vassell, a good quality win here. Sidney Outlaw, this guy is definitely a good prospect. He defeats Roger Huerta via decision unanimously, 30-27, 30-27, 29-28. I had him winning all 3 rounds. Roger Huerta, I mean, this was a mismatch. We saw the odds. I think it was minus 800 for Sidney Outlaw. So the guy gets the win over a well-respected veteran, I guess, in Roger Huerta. But at this point in Huerta's career, I mean, he's really on the downside, and he's 0-3 now in his latest in Bellator. Overall, he's 1-5 in his Bellator career. So he has really struggled overall in Bellator and just overall in his career. Next up, we had Aviv Gonzalez defeats Zaka Fatuladzadi. Didn't pronounce that right, but finishes him via anaconda choke. And Haim Gonzalez defeats Artur Pronet via heel hook. That was impressive. I did like that one. Obviously, that is another fight that Bellator wanted this guy to win in Israel. They wanted him to get the win. He got the job done. And then Austin Vanderford picks up another win over Gracik Bosnian, 29-28 across the board. Closer fight than the odds indicated for sure, but Vanderford gets the win. The guy's still a really good prospect. And then just looking through the prelims, you had Sinead Kavanaugh defeat Olga Room via TKO punches, another upset there. And then Robson Gracie Jr. wins his fight. And there's a bunch of other fighters that honestly aren't too important. So overall, I mean, there were some nice finishes, but again, another fight card where Bellator's big favorites win. There is a Bellator card this weekend. There will be no UFC, but there is Bellator. Bellator London 2/Bellator 235. We have Michael Page, Terry Brazier, Charlie Ward, Sam Sicilia, Shane Campbell's on that card actually as well, Mike Shipman. So Fabian versus Fabian Edwards. I like that fight a lot. So some decent fights in this card coming up. I'll break that down later in the week. Hopefully some odds pop up for that. I should mention there's no podcast tomorrow because we don't have UFC for a couple of weeks. There's no UFC card this weekend or next weekend. There will be one after that. So we actually have a nice little break here from the UFC. I would prefer just a 1 week break, but 2 weeks is okay too. I mean, we've had a crazy week, a crazy year of UFC events. So a break's, I think, needed at this point, just to clear everyone's mind. I mean, even my breakdowns haven't been amazing lately, so it's going to be good to like clear my mind and just kind of get back to the basics as far as picking the fights. There's been some tough fights to pick for sure, but I'd like to have some more success with my picks. I know I'm not the only one struggling lately, though. There's been some tough ones. All right, a couple other things here. No fight announcements to talk about, but the Bare Knuckle Fighting Championship, they had their card on the weekend. I should mention that. Jason Knight knocked out Artem Lobov. Joey Beltran also beat Chase Sherman, so there's a couple wins there from former UFC guys. Johnny Bedford won his fight as well. I'm still not 100% sold on the BKFC thing, but I know some people do like it. I wanted to mention it. They did sign this guy named the Iranian Hulk, which I thought was hilarious. And you got to look at this guy. We have the article over at bjpen.com. The guy looks like a comic book hero or something. This guy is crazy. I don't even know if this guy's going to have the cardio to go one round. He's a very big dude. So let's just say that. He weighs, according to his Wikipedia, 390 pounds, and he's 6'2". So he's a huge guy. I mean, I'm going to watch. I will watch this. I think that Bare Knuckles onto something with this freak show kind of thing. Tim Sylvia is calling this guy out now. I'd watch that fight. Why not? But, yeah, I'm not expecting too much from this dude. I want to mention that we got some reader questions here. Kevin Scott sent some in, so I'm going to answer them here in the last segment of today's show. Hi, Adam. After watching today's main event, he's talking about UFC Sao Paulo. I'm wondering what's next at 205. The way I see it, there are 4 fighters near the top that can be considered either next or 1 win away. Reyes, Anderson, Blachowicz, and Rakic if he gets past Uzdemir. There are others hanging on the outside looking in, like Smith, Uzdemir, and Gustafsson coming back, and Thiago Santos whenever he's healed up. I think it's clear Reyes is next for Jones, so I'm assuming that's the fight to make. And yes, according to Chris Taylor at bjpen.com, the UFC 247 card in Houston, Texas in February will be headlined by John Jones versus Dominic Reyes. So that fight is not official by the UFC, but Chris Taylor at BJ Penn is very legit with his sources, and I do believe him here. So Dominic Reyes versus John Jones looks like it's going to happen, and that's a great fight. Makes a lot of sense. I think it's the fight to make for sure. So I'm with you on that, assuming that's the fight to make. So he's saying if for the rest, if Rakic beats Uzdemir, I'd match them up like this, and I do think Rakic probably beats Uzdemir as well, though that's an interesting fight. He likes Corey Anderson versus Rakic. Winner gets the next title shot. It's interesting. Yan versus Smith, maybe winner gets rematch versus Santos. Interesting. Uzdemir versus Gustafsson. If Uzdemir beats Rakic, I do this. Anderson versus Yan, Rakic versus Smith, and Uzdemir versus Gustafsson. Just my thoughts. Love to hear your thoughts on this. Yeah, I mean, it's hard to say at this point. There's just so many moving parts. If Gustafsson comes back, that does bring another contender back into the fold, so that's interesting. If Anthony Johnson comes back and he comes back at light heavyweight, he's saying he's going to do it at heavyweight, but he wants to fight Jones. So if that happens, that's another guy that could jump in the mix. Rakic is a guy I think is super dangerous. He's looked incredible in the UFC. I think he probably beats Uzdemir, so I'm looking forward to that fight. I think at this point, Reyes obviously is going to get the next shot. I think Corey Anderson actually is pretty far up there. He's looked really good. He's actually talking a lot more, which is good. I do think they'll probably match up Corey Anderson against Anthony Smith. That would be my take on that one. And Rakic is just going to have to fight someone like maybe do Yan versus Rakic. I'm not too sure. I don't know where Yan fits right now because that wasn't a good fight, and UFC was expecting a lot more, which wasn't a good performance by him. So it's hard to say. It's a good question, Kevin. I just feel like there's so many moving parts right now, man, that it's kind of hard to kind of figure out this division. I do think Teo Santos, when he comes back, he's another guy that should jump back in the mix because a lot of people, including myself, thought he beat John Jones. So to me, he's right up there as well. But yeah, I'm just looking forward to seeing Reyes versus John Jones. Again, UFC 247 in February. That looks like it's going to happen. It's going to be a great fight. I'm really looking forward to seeing that happen. Jones probably wins again. No doubt about it. I mean, the guy is incredible. It's hard to pick against John Jones, but Reyes is a super dangerous guy and an interesting fight. But yeah, I'm just disappointed in Blachowicz and Sue. They got such a good opportunity here to really make a statement, and they just put on a very mediocre fight. The fans hate it. When the fans hate your fight, it's very hard to get a title shot, in my opinion. So Good questions here, Kevin, but we got to see what happens with the rest of this division, man. It's just hard to predict what's going to happen with all these guys until that fight with Jones and Reyes is official, and some of these other guys come back, including Gustafsson. I mean, if he comes back, that's another guy that's he's right up there as far as the rankings go. I just don't see him fighting Jones again, but he's still a great gatekeeper, and the same thing with Smith. I will say this about Smith: the fight with John Jones, yes, the scorecards were close because of the 2-point knee deduction, but he's another guy. I think he's an impressive fighter. Don't get me wrong. Look against Gus, but he's got to get a few more wins to get that rematch with Jones. In my opinion, the only guy who really deserves a rematch with Jones anytime soon is Thiago Santos, and he's unfortunately hurt. So we'll see what happens. 205 is looking better, though, than it ever has, arguably. There's some good prospects like Rakic coming up and a couple other guys. So interesting time in that division. All right, guys, I think that's it for today's show. Again, I won't be back with Cole tomorrow to break down the UFC card because we don't have one. So unfortunately, it'll just be one podcast, but I'll be back tomorrow morning at 10 a.m. as always, breaking down the latest in the world of mixed martial arts. You guys can follow me on Twitter at MMAOB, podcast, MMAOddsbreaker.com, YouTube, Anchor, SoundCloud, Spotify, iTunes. Please go to iTunes, subscribe to the show, the audio edition of the show if you want, or you can just watch me do my talking here on YouTube. Also, check me out, guys, at bjpan.com. Got a bunch of articles. Sunday's my busy day there, so I think I had 10 articles yesterday. So got all the news, including Shogun talking about bringing Stomps back to the UFC. And also check me out at mmarings.net. Guys, thanks again for tuning into the podcast. I always appreciate the support. I'll be back tomorrow breaking down the latest in the world of MMA. Have a great day, and I'll see you guys tomorrow. Bye.